After Twilight Wanderer and the Moonlit Saviour, the rulers of Battle for Attoractia are nothing but one big disappointment. One of the rulers got a gimmick deck later on, but that's the furthest any of this cycle of 5 rulers got. I say cycle of rulers because they all share a ruler side and are constructed with the exact same mechanical themes. This will make this video much shorter than the rest of this series, as not only do I only have one ruler to discuss, that ruler is basically nothing. For the entirety of this series, I'll be referring to each of these J-rulers as their titles to differentiate them from the original ruler. Faria the Chosen Girl sets the stage for the rest of the rulers. She's a 1000 heroic spirit, and like the entire cycle, she counts as her original ruler. All of them check for a certain magic stone, and if you have 4 of them in play, you get more effects. For the Chosen Girl, she checks for Call to Action Memoria to destroy an opponent's resonator, and if you have 4 calls out, destroy all their resonators. There is one card that kind of supports this, Grispalesta, Magic Stone Researcher, which has an enter effect that allows you to banish any of your stones, then call that many. But it's a Darkness Wind card, so it might not fit every deck, and it will result in 4 stones that produce 1 colour if it's successful, so you might not even want to. Back to the Chosen Girl. You're destroying 1 resonator and that's it. The chance of hitting 4 is so unlikely, it's essentially a non-entity. The Chosen Girl's final effect is the most interesting part of her card, though I question why she wasn't support for her original ruler instead of being a ruler herself. Whenever you gain life, all of your J resonators gain a +100/+100 counter. I made a big deal about Faria's original ruler not having any payoff for her effect. Well, here it is, and she can't use it. I really wonder what they were thinking with this, but it gets worse. Call to Action Memoria produces light, or if you tap it, you can pay light and 1 for 100 life. More than what Faria's ruler side costed for less life. Do I really have to comment on it? The Chosen Girl can also use Excalibur, hence why she counts as the original Faria. Imperishable, target attack, +200/+200. Doesn't really help much, she'd be so much better with Drain, but that keyword didn't exist back then. I think Faria the Chosen Girl is a fun build-around ruler. More potential than Faria herself thanks to the counter distribution, but still not a great deck. It's both too slow and too easily disrupted for that. Melge's Conqueror of Flame is a 1600 heroic spirit that counts as Melge's the one charmed by the Demon Sword. When it flips, it checks for a Brutal Conqueror's Memoria. If you have 1, you check your top 3 for resonators with a total cost of 3 or less, put them onto the field, and they gain swiftness, while the rest stay on the top of your deck. If you have 4 Brutal Conqueror's Memoria, it's all resonators you find instead. No additional effect for Conqueror of Flame. While chance-based in more ways than one, I think you could make a deck where it's majority resonators, and those resonators have a cost of 3 or less, so you can hit the minimum amount of chance reliably. Not saying it would be good. As far as I can find, this card never placed in a top 8. But for a casual fun deck, it's got some value. Fire is astoundingly strong in Alice Cluster and very low to the ground, so it has that going for it too. Since Conqueror of Flame counts as the original Melge's, he gains access to the full powers of Leviathan. That is another extremely powerful card, but mostly for swiftness, not its tap abilities for Melge's. Imperishable is iffy too since Black Moonbeam, with 600 defense, burn to cinders. It's not really a big advantage to Conqueror of Flame. Brutal Conqueror's Memoria is to Call to Action Memoria, as Melge's is to Faria, the mirror image. Produces fire, or pay fire 1 and tap it to deal 100 damage to your opponent. Actually worse than Call to Action Memoria, since it doesn't combo into anything. Melge's Conqueror of the Flame is much like Faria the Chosen Girl. Fun build around, not competitive, it's alright. Nothing to get too angry about. I don't think the 4 judgment cost is too much of an issue here, since the effect is a bit of a bomb, provided you can make it consistent enough through building. Though that type of build is a bit antithetical to the Regalia heavy builds of Alice Cluster. Machina Clever Researcher moves Machina from Void to Water, where he will largely stay afterwards. This also brings machines into Water, though there are a couple of decent water cards for machines in Battle for Attoractia. Machina was generally put into Wind for ramp. Interestingly, and not surprisingly, Machina would be both Wind and Water when he returned in Alice Origins. Clever Researcher is an 800/800 heroic spirit that counts as Machina, the Mechanical Emperor. When he flips, if you control Aloof Researcher's Memoria, he searches your deck for 2 machines with a total cost of 7 or less and puts them onto the field. If you control 4 Aloof Researcher's Memoria, search for 4 machines with a total cost of 12 or less and field them instead. He also gains +200/+200 for each machine you control. Clever Researcher is in an odd position. It's a +2 most of the time, tutoring 2 to the field at that, and will gain a buff from what you're getting. That's good. Original Machina isn't likely to get much more than that over a game, and so has to pay for them, on top of paying to search for them. Clever Researcher is also the same speed to flip as Machina, both cost 4. He can use all of his stuff, and machines are fairly independent, yet it's still not as good in application. Machina doesn't shove a useless stone into your stone deck. Machina can help you stabilize in a pinch. Machina can cheat things out from your hand regardless of cost. Machines are amazing at card draw, so tutoring from the deck isn't that big of a boon. Lastly, Machina has a game-winning God's Art packed in. Machina is that much better of a ruler than Clever Researcher. About Aloof Researcher's Memoria. It produces water, or can tap and pay water 1 to loot. Draw a card, discard a card. Not worth the total 3 will, just exists for its name, but that's par the course, isn't it? If anything could have made Clever Researcher better, it would have been if Legionus, the Mechanical City, could have targeted it. With the massive amount of buffs Clever Researcher gets, giving him Pierce would have been game-winning and replaced everything Machina could do. But this isn't the case. He just gives you a +2 and acts as a big beat stick with no keyword skills. Arla, Guardian of the Skies, is a 1000/1000 heroic spirit, surprisingly without flying. This would become a meme in Force of Will, art depicting characters flying on cards without flying. Arla also shifts attributes from light to wind, something he would reference with his Alice Origins ruler being light and wind. As with the rest of the rulers in this set, Guardian is also considered to be the original J ruler, Arla, the hegemon of the sky. When Guardian flips, he checks for First Flight's Memoria, and if you have it, put the top card of your Magic Stone deck into your Magic Stone area, recover all of your stones, and draw a card. If you control 4 First Flight's Memoria, draw 3 instead. Guardian of the Skies has one final effect, and this raises him into a position of actual relevance. When your Resonator attacks, recover a Magic Stone. This would result in an infinite combo when Legacy Lost was released during the Lapis Cluster. This set included Grusballista's Secret Technique, a Darkness Wind chant with quick cast for Darkness and Wind. It turns a Magic Stone into a 1000/1000 Resonator with Swiftness until end of turn that is still a Magic Stone. When it attacks, it untaps itself, causing an infinite combo. Information about Lapis Cluster is a bit hard to find, so I'm not sure how good this was. I didn't play during this time, but from what I can tell, it was top 4 material. What is interesting here is that the deck would completely forgo the enter ability to go for higher quality stones. It doesn't necessarily need that enter effect, though it would help. First Flight's Memoria produces wind, and in a surprising turn, doesn't require 2 will to use its effect, just wind and tapping itself to produce one of any colour. It's still not good. There is better colour fixing, and stones are so consistent, this is a waste of time. Being Ala, Hegemon of the Sky, Guardian of the Skies gains full access to Artemis, the god's bow. Great card, but doesn't gain much from Ala. Its best effect costs the least, and from what I can tell, it was never used in Guardian builds. Surprisingly, Ala Guardian of the Skies went from a terrible ruler on release to a really good gimmick ruler. It's still gimmicky, but it's the best ruler of the set by a very far margin, and due to the fact it could compete without Energize, an effect at the time not a mechanic, says a lot, but he was a blip on the radar from what I can tell. As soon as Prisha, true Beastmaster, hit the scene, Ala fell out of relevance, very similar to what happened with Blazer. Rezard, Dark Necromancer, is an 800-1000 heroic spirit that counts as Rezard the Desecrating Vampire. When he flips, if you have Sorrowful Necromancer's Memoria, he puts the top 4 cards of your deck into your chance standby. If you control 4 Sorrowful Necromancer's Memoria, put the top 7 cards into your chance standby instead. He can also pay Darkness to put a card from your hand into your chance standby, lowering the cost from 2 Void and raising it to instant speed from sorcery speed. Dark Necromancer seems to have been made with Hades, Lord of the Dead in mind, a resonator from the same set. Hades' entire theme is chance standby and has alternate uses for cards in your chance standby zone. He needs the large amount of cards in the chance standby that Dark Necromancer provided, but neither Dark Necromancer nor Hades were ever relevant. Hades just isn't good enough. He's rather mediocre for how slow he is and what he asks of the player. As I said with the original Rezard, the only cards with Trigger and Stealth that got a lot of serious play were Rezard's Parent, Melda and Rizza, Flame Trap, and Croco Shark. These cards were very rarely played with Rezard though, let alone Dark Necromancer. Dark Necromancer gets Rezard's Death Scythe the Life Reaper, which is a fantastic card itself, but gets even better with Rezard and Dark Necromancer. It gives them Dracula's effect, wherein if something they damage dies in the same turn they damaged it, they resurrect it. This effect has never been relevant on any card it's ever been on, but it is something, and on a personal note, I like it. Sorrowful Necromancer's Memoria is definitely the best of the 5 Memoria stones. It produces Darkness, but you can also pay Darkness 1 and tap it to remove target card from your opponent's graveyard. Yes, it's just Dark Alice's ruler effect for 2 more on a stone, but you don't have to run Dark Alice, and the ability to meddle with graveyard effects is incredibly useful. While Revival isn't terribly common in the 2 New Frontiers Alice cluster is in, nor Alice cluster itself, Remnant is very annoying, and this stops that. In the 7 Kings of the Land, I said Alice the Saint of Healing was the worst ruler of that set, and nothing has been compared to it since then. I think Rezard Dark Necromancer is very comparable, where Dark Alice is reactive and wants the player to not do things they should be doing, the payoff is actually good. Dark Necromancer doesn't really do anything but interact with a really mediocre card. The setup of the chance standby isn't really of any value since it's chance-based and hard to take advantage of. Dark Necromancer actually leans into a do-nothing card. I think there might be something you could do with him and Croco Shark, but Seer of the Blue Moon does that job better, as does just about anything else really. On to the rankings for Battle for Attoractia. Dark Necromancer is the worst ruler of the set. It most as well do nothing on both sides and interacts with an incredibly mediocre card. Clever Researcher is just not worth playing whatsoever. If you even think about running this guy, run Machiner instead. Don't do this to yourself. Conqueror Flame might have some build-around deck in his back pocket, but I don't think it's good or worth running him for. The Chosen Child is a fun build-around ruler and arguably an improvement over the original Faria, even if she has to cast Judgment to do so. She should have been a support card for Faria though. Guardian of the Skies only gets this far because of a gimmick deck where he was briefly good. If Grusbalester's secret technique was never printed, he'd be in the lower half of this list. Join me next week where we put all 4 lists together and finally rank all 25 rulers of Alice Cluster. This has been Some Gamer Dude, and thanks for watching.